With all the videos that we make here at Homebound, the most common pushback that we generally get about making Aliyah sounds kind of like this. Yes, I understand Eretz Yisroel is important, and I would love to live there, but... Now this sentence is usually followed by one of the following concerns. It's impossible to make a living there. The government is evil and is trying to destroy our religion. My kids will get influenced by the secular Jews or drafted into the army, and certainly go off the derech. These are just a few of the most common reasons people will bring as proof that Aliyah is not only difficult, but actually irresponsible. So first off, I already clarify almost all of these issues throughout my previous videos. I would highly suggest that you go and watch my 6-part video series covering all of these points. It will only take about an hour or two of your time and will probably change your life. I'll leave a link to those videos in the description below. But what I really wanted to cover today is although many people have very real and valid concerns, and I'm not dismissing any of them, I myself had to deal with many of these concerns when I made my Aliyah just a few years ago. Making Aliyah is no easy task, but what I would like to do is explain why all of these issues shouldn't actually stop anyone from making Aliyah. See, when Hashem writes all throughout his Torah about how important it is to live in Eretz Yisroel, he never seems to make mention of any conditions. The wording in the Torah does not seem to imply that Eretz Yisroel is a suggestion, but rather it's a factual concept. Eretz Yisroel is the land that the Jews must live in. It's very clear. And in fact, the Torah even goes out of its way to give us all the details of the sin of the Meraglim, and how Moshe Rabbeinu even repeats these lessons to Klal Yisroel multiple times throughout the Torah, with the very simple and straightforward message that Jews must live in Eretz Yisroel in order to properly serve Hashem, and that we should not take all of our personal concerns into account. We also have the very detailed story of Ezra and Nehemiah, the hundreds of teachings, examples, and lessons throughout the Talmud and the Medrash, all with the one same blatantly clear message. When Jews refuse to live in Eretz Yisroel, we pay a very heavy price. And you should know that our concerns and fears are not much different than those of the Meraglim, or the Jews in Bavel, or any of the previous generations for that matter. Because Eretz Yisroel has never been an easy or simple place to live in, but rather it's a land that you can only live in if you have faith, emunah, and bitachon in Hashem. Chazal tell us that Eretz Yisroel is only acquired through difficulties. But this is not a coincidence. See, Hashem specifically designed Eretz Yisroel as a land where we are forced to have the most trust in Him, to rely on Him for everything. It is a place where we naturally would never be able to survive. But in each generation, we repeat our mistakes, and we keep using our own judgment to decide that the Torah isn't referring to us. We say that everything the Torah says about Eretz Yisroel must be referring to a different generation, and that nowadays, Chutz La'aretz is more conducive to serving Hashem and performing His mitzvos. But the fact is that it is written many times in the Torah that Eretz Yisroel is actually the only place that you can properly perform the mitzvos in the Torah. And these words are agreed upon by almost all of the major commentaries. Now obviously, we must perform Hashem's mitzvos wherever we are. But one thing is for certain, Lichatchila, Eretz Yisroel is the only correct place to be performing the mitzvos. Now I understand that many will still say, but the fact is there are chinuch challenges here, and people do go off the derech in Eretz Yisroel. So allow me to explain. See, people go off the derech in Chutz La'aretz too, and the chinuch system in Chutz La'aretz is also far from perfect. And each place in Chutz La'aretz has its own long list of issues and challenges as well. Both Eretz Yisroel and Chutz La'aretz have many pros and cons, and I don't believe that anyone can truthfully answer which one has more or worse issues. But the simple truth is that Hashem writes literally hundreds of times in His Torah that Klal Yisroel only has one land from which they can properly serve Him, and only this one land can rightfully be referred to as the eternal home of the Jewish people, not just 3,000 years ago, and not just in the times of Mashiach, but always, in each and every generation, is this land the only place that we can call home. And even though I know people will quote the Tosfos in Masechtas Ksubos, or the Satmar Rebbe, and a few others as proof that we don't need to live in Eretz Yisroel until the coming of Mashiach, you must know that these make up maybe 5 to 10% of the views on this matter. No less than 90% of the sages who rule on this matter agree that the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisroel applies to all Jews in all generations. And is there any halachic dispute on which Klal Yisroel proudly follows the minority opinion, let alone a minority of this magnitude? And if the entire purpose of performing the mitzvahs is to fulfill the will of our Creator, then why, when it comes to this mitzvah, which Hashem expresses so clearly and so many times that it is His will that we live in this land, why do we try so hard to get out of this mitzvah? I believe it is the responsibility of every God-fearing Jew to honestly ask themselves these questions. Why, when it comes to the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisroel, we seem to go against every single principle that we use in determining halacha? And truthfully, it goes completely against our entire outlook and the way that we serve Hashem in all other areas of our religion. Shabbos, Yom Tov, Kashrus, Ribbis, Taharas Mishpacha. There isn't a single area of halacha where we don't take every single chumrah into account, even a minority opinion, just in case. But when it comes to Eretz Yisroel, we'll ignore hundreds of psukim in the Torah, countless pages of the Talmud. We'll follow minority opinions of rabbis that most people never even heard of, and we'll twist and bend the words of our greatest Rishonim and Achronim to somehow make it seem that their words were not referring to us when they talk about the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisroel and all the greatness that comes with it. And for the many people who like to quote the famous Heterim of the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, Perek Hey, as proof that we don't need to live in Eretz Yisroel, I assure you that anyone who quotes this Rambam has never actually read it inside. Because to quote the Rambam's Heterim, to leave Eretz Yisroel, is actually taking one sentence from an entire perek completely out of context. Because that entire perek is actually the Rambam telling us how important it is to live in Eretz Yisroel and warning us never to leave. And if you don't believe me, please just look it up inside and you can see for yourself. And then for those who still quote the rabbis from 70, 80, or 90 years ago, who told Jews not to live in Eretz Yisroel due to the dangers of Zionism and the dangerous government who were trying to destroy the Torah and our religion. With all due respect, anyone who still thinks this way should pay a visit to Eretz Yisroel, because there have been some very serious changes here over the past 80 years. And those issues from 80 or 90 years ago, they simply don't exist anymore. Now I had another thought I wanted to share. When it comes to this mitzvah of living in Eretz Yisroel, people seem to get very worked up at the idea of giving up any comforts or taking on any challenges in order to perform it. But I'd like to suggest the following. See, every frum Jew grows up hearing those wonderful stories of the man who sold everything he had in order to purchase the only esrog in town, or the man whose family was willing to starve so that he can continue learning Torah. There are so many beautiful stories of holy Yidden who gave up so much just in order to have matzah for Pesach, or wine for Kiddush, or the like. These stories and lessons are truly endless. But have you ever heard the story of the family that gave up everything just in order to live in Hashem's beautiful land, in order to fulfill the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisroel? Did you know that right now, as we speak, Baruch Hashem, there are hundreds, if not thousands of families around the world preparing to give up their comforts, their jobs, their friends, and communities for the sake of this holy mitzvah? Did you know that there have already been hundreds of thousands of Jews who have given up so much to live in this holy land? Maybe Jews in Chutz La'aretz should start telling their young children the stories of the holy Jewish families who at this very moment are giving up so much just in order to live in Hashem's holy land, in order to become closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But for some reason, Klal Yisroel has downgraded this mitzvah to one which receives almost no honor or respect, even though it's one of the few mitzvos that Chazal tell us is equal to all 613 commandments. Maybe if we changed our narrative just a little, the next generation of Jews would have a chance to have the love and desire for this holy mitzvah that we were never taught to have. I'd also like to shed a little light on the issue that many people put forward, that there are so many non-religious Jews here, and the government, the people who run this country, are sinners and anti-Torah. So first off, I'd like to remind you that the Rambam himself tells us that it's better to live in Eretz Yisroel, even amongst idol worshippers, rather than anywhere else in the world, even amongst Jews. And I don't believe that he was joking when he said this. And you should know that the reason we have a secular government is because the majority of this country is still made up of secular Jews, who are obviously voting for the people that they want to run the country. What kind of excuse is it to say that you're not willing to come because of this reason? There are millions of religious Jews who live in Chutz La'aretz. If even a small percentage would come, and combined with the fact that we have 5 to 10 times more children than secular Jews do, we would be the majority in just a few more years, and we can then vote in a Torah-observant government, just as we wish. This really isn't rocket science. See, every single excuse that people give for not making Aliyah would inevitably be fixed if they simply made Aliyah. And in truth, all of us, religious, God-fearing Jews, should feel ashamed over this matter. See, people talk so much hate against Theodor Herzl, Ben Gurion, and the many others who helped establish this state. But the fact is they, not us, did establish this state. Why did the secular Jews have so much more desire than the religious Jews to rebuild Eretz Yisroel? Maybe the reason they run this country is because they have this merit, Granted, they may have had a lot of the wrong intentions, but the fact is, they were responsible for building up this land, much more than the Torah-observant Jews. And this is something that we should feel very embarrassed about. And I'd like to leave off with the following message. See, the mindset of so many Jews is that if we come to Eretz Yisroel, we will be influenced by the people. And if our children go to the army, they will be influenced by the secular Jews there. But we need to stop looking at secular Jews as our enemy. And we need to start internalizing the fact that these are our brothers and sisters. And instead of being so scared of being influenced by them, let's start being excited to be the influencers. Stop looking at these Yidden in Eretz Yisroel as a threat, and start looking at Eretz Yisroel as an amazing opportunity to take the millions of lost Jews who live here and elevate them, and thereby elevate everything. As a great tzaddik once wrote, "Righteous individuals do not complain about the wickedness. They increase righteousness. They do not complain about heresy. They increase faith. And they do not complain about ignorance, but rather they increase wisdom." If this would be the new mindset of Klal Yisroel, we would certainly see the coming of Mashiach.